So if you're wondering where happiness was, it's at the PM Gallery, but that's the good news. The bad news is it's only part one. But our quest for happiness is here with Otino Corsano, and we're here at a show about photographs that does not have any photographs, and that's an actual very interesting process. So I interview people, and I'm going to be interviewing Otino, who also interviews people, so it's kind of like the CBC.
True.
Yeah. Interview is, interviewing interviews. So can you tell us a little bit about the process here?
Sure. I'm going to go through the process really quickly because I think a show like this, the conversation might be laden with like a process approach, and I kind of want to possibly go beyond that. And I think that was a perfect start to say that we both interview artists, and I've always talked to so many artists where the conversation gets stuck on the process, and then in the end it's like there's always that question of like, what exactly is this about? So in terms of where I started was with online images that I simply collected, and I grouped the images into sort of three groups. There were about 16 images each, and then I drew storyboards, ink drawings of all of the images. Once again, 16 in each one of the three groups. Once I had the storyboard drawings, I passed those on to commercial art film directors who helped me put together some 30-second videos, with these being sort of the starting points of each one of the shots that they would then put together for the films. And it was a really amazing process of working with the directors on this project. Caroline Ryan and Paul Weeks worked on video 3, and Peter Darley Miller created video number 1, and they did a really incredible job of reinterpreting the storyboard images in new ways in the creation of the 30-second.
So do they have these source photos, or do they have your storyboards to work from, or do they have both?
Some of them did see the originals, but I really provided them with the storyboards to work from primarily. And then it's interesting though to see how their final videos created a new set of images that are really removed at least one step or more from both the storyboards, and the source photos become a bit distanced, but it's interesting how they still kind of seep into the final works.
Well, these storyboards seem like more the actual object, and they're kind of bookcased or bookends of something that doesn't really exist. One being pictures on the internet, and the second being video.
True, yeah. Being in that intermediary spot makes them kind of interesting, and I'm really happy that you highlighted the drawings, because I think it's easy to kind of sidestep them and move straight to the videos, because the videos really are, I think, visually fantastic. I have to admit though, I really didn't anticipate creating the storyboards as being such a contemplative process for me. Originally I thought it was just going to be labor intensive and trying to get through them, but it really enabled me a great deal of time to spend with each one of the images, and kind of not only sort of making it my own with my own kind of storyboard style, but also kind of trying to preserve the integrity of the original images to begin with. And so there was always that balance, that push and pull between capturing the document and then creating something new at the same time.
Well, I gotta tell you, this is like one of the nicest storyboards I've ever seen.
Thanks.
I have some background in animation studios and filmmaking and stuff, and a lot of times it's just stickmen with explosions and titles. These are obviously like very well loved and labored over, and I was trying to decipher whether these were actual little like woodcuts or not when I first came in. They're so deliberately and so deliberately well done. Did you get any of the same sort of observations from the directors you're working with?
Actually, a lot of people who saw the show mentioned the same thing. They were wondering if they were printed and if I used woodcut. I use different pens when I do storyboarding work. I am a freelance storyboarder, and I've been inspired by different storyboard approaches. And I was using sort of these synthetic calligraphy pens that
nice.
are for the first time, and they really gave me this kind of fluid brush-like feel without having to like re-ink all the time, which was really, really fun. And I'm also inspired not only by the commercial storyboard side, but I think the reason why sometimes specific directors seek me out is because my style is also a little bit like outsider art. So, Raymond Pettibon is obviously a huge influence, and I worked with Jim Shaw when I was living in Los Angeles. And there's so many other artists who sort of have a very unique, almost even a retro style of storyboarding that link back to sort of maybe the Silver Age of comic books even.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, where my style comes from, and sometimes it works well with certain film projects.
Well, let's take a look at the film, some of the samples of the film projects, and it's like a still of clips that are reflecting your storyboards of photographs that you hunted and found on the internet. And Happiness Part 1. How did that play in your process of choosing the photos for it? I mean, there's a sense of isolation or tension. There's a sense of awkwardly designed urban spaces in a lot of these that people are inhabiting. What was your selection process for these happiness photos?
Sure. Thank you, because I think that's the question I was really waiting for. Like the why and the overall, the bigger picture of it. And I think at first, although my selection process was very instinctual, trying to find just things that essentially interest me, there was a sense of curating the images into specific categories that kind of created the same kind of feeling. And that was kind of paralleling lifestyle advertising. Of commercials, right? Where you have sort of this promise of happiness, but in the end, it's always linked to a certain product. And I think my work is really about is I kind of, at times, the advertising approach, I think it's very easy to be critical of. And then, yet, at the other side of things, anti-advertising, like for example, Adbusters, sometimes I can find that as just as much formulated. And so I think that this whole notion of happiness as being this balance of both utilizing the same mechanisms that commercial advertising uses to really record and document these moments of calm and peacefulness in people's lives, like these Kodak moments where a lot of times these images are taken for granted, really. And then actually put them all together so that it's both, you can be critical of it and say, why is it that these images have this sort of aesthetic, sensibility to them? But also you can still become lost in them as sort of these visual objects that have their own language. And I think that that's important for me to always have that balance of examining the images so that they're worth viewing, I guess. So I think I'm less critical of advertising as embracing it in new forms and creating new modes of visual language so that the viewer can actually create their narratives.
I think one of my measurements for exhibitions is the amount of time I'm able to spend or I want to spend with them, and I feel like I could spend a long time going through these images and making even Gestaltian kind of associations between the spots, and then diving into the subject matter. It's really interesting both in each individual element and the process and the collaboration. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate it.